All right, great. Thanks, Tim. Why don't we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance?
And faith, creed, and color. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
care and color. By faith. Oh Lord, our
So I apologize for the late start and I'm already skipping items on my agenda. So we're going to call the regular Board of Education meeting, February 21st of 2024. I have 7:05 PM. Again, they apologize for the late start. The president was having some technical difficulties. Mr. Secretary, could we move on to the roll call, please?
Absolutely. Mr. Green,
Present.
Ms. Knox,
Present.
Mr. Richards is here. Mr. Vinatelli,
Here.
Ms. Berkmeyer,
Here.
Mr. DeRue,
Here.
and Mr. Moses, I believe, is excused.
Yes, Mr. Moses is feeling a little under the weather. All right, on to item C. The approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Motion by Vendatelli, supported by Ms. Berkmeyer. Let's do a roll call on that.
Mr. Vinatelli,
Yes.
Ms. Berkmeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. DeRue,
Yes.
and Mr. Green.
Yes. All right, motion carries. It looks like our student rep is not coming today. Are we expecting her or you haven't heard from her otherwise? All right, well, we'll move along and skip item D. However, if she does show up, we will jump back up to item D at that time. Superintendent's update, Mr. Jankowski.
Okay, just another update. Most of this will be an update on where we're at with the bond. You can advance the slide then. Well, use my remote's not working. So just where we're at, we're closing up some of the initial projects. We're on the punch list for the door hardware and access control. So that should be wrapped up by the end of this month. We did have a couple small change orders just because we had some panic fires that didn't necessarily work. So we're updating those. Temperature controls at the high school, that's been a huge project. Will be wrapped up in March. We're on track for that. Next slide, please. High school phase 1. If you've been around the high school, you see that taking advantage of the weather, the walls are going up. You can now kind of see the outline of the restaurant.
Excuse me, Mr. Jankowski, is your microphone on?
We're all having technical difficulties today.
We are. It's a bit of a challenge.
All right.
Thank you.
So the walls are going up, that they're making great progress on that. So you can kind of see the outline. This will be the restaurant and the new auto shop area. Interior walls are going up, which I'll show you some pictures in a second. And some of the electrical work and the mechanical work is ongoing. Phase 2, the demolition is just about done. They are doing the saw cutting. This is for the new health occupations area in order to run all of the utilities. So that's ongoing. And the fire alarm, the new fire alarm system, the wires are being pulled for that. The goal is to put that in have both systems running and then switch over to the new system. So therefore we never have any time where it's down. And next slide. So this is just shows you some pictures. So this is where the health occupations used to be, which is now the engineering room. This will be actually the robotics room. There used to be 2 doors there, but we took 2 classrooms, made it into one so that you could have the field. And so you can see those doors are buttoned up now. Next slide. Interior walls are now going up, kind of in the same area. So you can see that they're putting those in as well. Next slide. And this is where it's at with the restaurant. So you can kind of see that now it's really starting to take shape. This is actually facing out towards the parking lot. So they're going towards the building. So you can see the shorter area is the restaurant, which is now kind of in, and then the other area will be the auto shop area. Next slide. And as part of it, we have our buildings trades classes. So basically every other week they are going through so they can understand, they can see these things in operation. So they meet with each of the trades. They get to kind of see the progress and ask questions. It's been remarkably successful. And I think I mentioned before, we also have students who are helping with the design aspects of, from choosing, flooring, colors for hallways, things like that as well. And that's been going very successfully. Next slide. So we are kind of working towards putting phase 3 out to bid. Right now, we have about 3.1 million that's left in the budget for that. We are working on having an estimate from the design, then that will go out to bid. The goal is to have that out to bid in May, and then to basically award it at the August meeting. But we would have everybody identified, the low bidders and everything at that point in time. And then that would start September 2024 with a completion date of August 2025. We are also beginning just brainstorming for Ashley Elementary. Again, our goal is to have that out for bid 2024, awarded in October, and then it would start pretty much, depending on the weather, shortly thereafter. Challenges. So what we're doing is a lot has changed since we initially rolled out the bond. So universal preschool being one. If that launches, we could see up to 300 more students just for 4-year-olds alone in the fall, and then potentially 300 3-year-olds shortly thereafter, depending on how the state does that. The free lunch is another thing because our kitchens were not built to serve as many people as we've had. So we're taking this all into account. We've also had election law changes. This is something that kind of with the Sugarbush location where when we had an issue today because they're doing early voting when we were talking about like making transition and potentially selling that building, they weren't supposed to have early voting there. So then they invariably decided to have it there, which has given us some issues, but it's just another reason as to why we can kind of separate that as much, because before the bond, the law did not require 10 days of early voting. Now it does. And so that has to be held someplace. And so that's the challenge. And I get the issues that Chesterfield has, but that's, again, as much as we can kind of just address that we still have to operate a school. And so we've been making the best of it this week, I would say. And then elementary enrollment. The initial projections, remember, were that we'd shrink. Actually, our elementary enrollment has been up, and it's still part of right sizing everything. And we still have this building is predominantly empty. And if we can, so what we're looking to do, next slide, is on March 4th, we're having it's just a continuation of our annual forum that we have for the bond. So we'll share kind of where we're at now. And then we'll also look through kind of the career pathways, kind of how that's fleshing out. And then we'll look at any changes that we have to make, and we'll kind of get input from the community at that point in order to what adjustments and what ideas that we have based off of just kind of the outline of the bond and the new challenges since the bond was passed. And basically, hopefully we'll walk out from there with just kind of prioritize what changes and what the community wants. Any questions? Nope.
For those that went on, I know some people had toured with you to other schools and
Mhm.
things, for input, like on the new elementaries. When, is there an estimate of when those, when those people might reconvene or?
Yeah, so that'll be after we'll do this. We'll have this meeting and then from there, we'll kind of then reconvene on those areas.
I do have a question around allowing, the schools as a voting location. Is that a state law? Do we have to allow?
Yes, if you are, basically, if you're any entity that, where you're not paying taxes and any part of the government, and even churches, I believe, they can designate you as a site. And so we do have additional, so we do have a Fortis guard who's going to be stationed there. We did talk to them because the signage wasn't really appropriate. So we had people going to the main entrance. And once you're inside, we walled off that section. So if you're inside the building, you can't
Mhm.
get to the other side. So we do have additional security in place. We do have our SRO. We'll go over there just multiple times in order to make sure. It's just, the tough part is it's the electioneering. Because the law states they have to be so far from the polling place, but it's still a school in operation. So we have to make sure that you can't be, yelling and carrying on because you're still on school grounds. You can if you go to the sidewalk,
Mhm.
because that's a public place and they have the right to free speech.
So if there's election law violations, is Chesterfield addressing those as well? Like with,
Well, we've made them aware
Okay.
of the issues and we were addressing those as they come up.
all right, thank you.
Anybody else? I think it's pretty cool that our building trades classes and our designs are getting out there in the hard hats and the safety vests, and they're getting to check things out. It's kind of where the rubber meets the road. They're not just sitting in a classroom. They're actually getting out to see what's going on and talk to our contractor, and that's pretty awesome stuff. Not everybody gets that opportunity. All right, moving on down the agenda. Item F is hearing of the public. Those who wish to address the board on agenda items are asked to complete a brief request stating their name, address, and the subject of their comments. Remarks about specific employees should be directed to them personally and not included in the public forum. Administration will follow up with concerns within 48 hours of this board meeting. I do not have any requests to speak, and I don't see anybody at the podium. So with that, we will move on to item. They do. I see blue sheets out there. Did you ladies want to address us? Are you sure? We're a fun group to talk to. Okay, fair enough. I'll ask Dennis to keep us in line then. That moves to item G, communications from the superintendent.
No communications.
No communications moves us to item H, consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are of a recurring nature and are voted on as a single item. Any board member may request an item be removed without a vote of the board, and it will be discussed and voted upon individually. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the consent agenda meeting minutes from the January 31st, 24 regular meeting, the board workshop of January 20th of 24. In addition to that, the personnel report, the financial report, and the bills payable from January of 2024 that all of you were sent in your board packet. So I will entertain a motion to approve all of those on the consent agenda.
So moved. Support.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Ms. Berkmeyer. Again, we're going to do a roll call for the consent because of the personnel report and the amount of money involved with the financial report and the bills payable. Mr. Secretary?
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Berkmeyer,
Yes.
Mr. Richards, yes. Mr. Vinatelli,
Yes.
Mr. DeRue?
Yeah.
And Mr. Green.
Yes. Motion carries. We'll move on to new business as soon as my laptop catches up here. Again, the new president having technological problems. Well, there we are. Field trips. There's a couple of field trips to approve. We'll approve each of them individually. Dawn Batiste, the drama teacher at the high school, is requesting permission to take up to 10 students to Mackinac Island, May 16th through May 19th of 2024 for the Michigan Speech Coaches Spring Festival. There will be a minimum of 2 chaperones with the maximum of 10 students attending that trip. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the drama field trip to Mackinac Island, May 16th through May 19th of 2024. I will entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Support. Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Venditelli. I get it. I get it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The second field trip that is seeking approval is a field trip for the state building competition, bridge building competition. Anchor Bay High School, for the first time ever, and middle school students qualified for the state bridge building competition, March 11th and 12th, 2024 in Grand Rapids. Students and sponsors will be staying at the Amway Grand. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve both the high school and middle school students to attend the state bridge building competition, March 11th and 12th in Grand Rapids. So I will entertain a motion to approve that as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Birkmeyer, supported by Ms. Knox. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We will move on to new business, the policy second reading of our dress code. The Board of Education reviewed the dress code policy updates for a first reading at the January 31st board meeting. The proposed dress code was published on the school website, and tonight before the board is the second reading and adoption of the policy. The recommendation of the administration is that the Board of Education approve Anchor Bay School District's dress code policy updates as presented. I will entertain a motion as presented.
Support.
All right. Motion by Mr. Richards, supported by Ms. Birkmeyer. How about is there any conversation we want to have with this specific one? I know we had asked that this be posted on the school website, so I'll start with the superintendent. Have you received any feedback on this in the posting or any concerns?
No, we had it on the main page and we had it on the main page of each building and have had received no emails or complaints, questions or anything.
And just as a follow-up, before I turn over the rest of you, there was a committee form that was made up of a couple of high school students, a couple of parents, our principal at the high school, our principals from the middle school, as well as 2 board members. So we try to pull in everybody in the Anchor Bay community before making any changes. So I will open it up to you guys if you have any comments or if you heard anything, feedback from your constituents or where we want to go next. Mr. Drew, you have something?
I do. I'm on the homepage right now. Where's it at?
It is on the center, like the news. It should be like the second or third item, not now. Because as we add stuff, I think it's early childhood or kindergarten roundup might be first, then it's the second item.
All right, I'm not seeing it. For one, because I was looking to see, for some reason I can't pull my board pack up, but did we, I know at our our Saturday meeting that we had our strategic planning meeting, there was talk of possibly tightening up the language around what girls can wear. Did we change any of that from that meeting to now? I personally think that, and I've talked to a lot of parents, talked to some other districts, some other teachers from other districts and other, am I missing it somewhere?
like 3/4 down.
It's under the news headlines. It's,
The third or fourth bullet down,
Yeah, it says
Yeah.
Board to vote on new dress code in
Yeah.
February.
and you can click to read the policy there, John, if you want to talk about the policy.
Yeah, I
itself.
do.
Yeah, so take your time.
Maybe I'm messed up. I'm seeing,
Go past the preschool open house.
yeah.
It's right after preschool open.
That's we had things. So Power School registration emails that just went up, I think yesterday. Community bond forum went up Monday, and then it's right after preschool open house. It says board to vote on new dress code in February.
The one before the kid with the backpack.
Yeah.
Our future chair.
Tim, is there a chance that you can hop over to the webpage
Yeah.
and bring that up? Then we can all
can
look
you
at it
help me
together.
out? Oh, you gotta hit, okay, I get it. It wasn't on the main page. You hit district news and then go over to.
It
Well, it's just fine. I didn't do that. My bad.
Keep going, Tim,
I
a little further
apologize.
down the new headlines there, right there in the middle.
So. As we were reading this, I get where you guys were going with. Or the committee, and that's great. We had the committee input or input from parents and students and the board members, but to make it gender neutral, I guess you'd say, it just goes for boys and girls. To just leave it to where clothing that exposes, as long as they don't expose nipples, genitals, or buttocks, and they have 2 straps, the way I read it, that's pretty wide open. Going from what we had. And when I asked in that strategic planning meeting, if what we currently had was a major issue, if we had major issues with dress code, I guess I'm wondering what prompted the big need to do this, and why, not to be a troublemaker, like I said,
No.
I just don't, I just think that for somebody looking to take it to the limit, that offers up a lot of leeway. And I got a problem with that. And talking to parents, they thought that was a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I can give you the background how we got to this process is, one, we hadn't updated many of our policies, whether it's the student code of conduct or the dress code for as far back as we could check. I mean, it just hasn't been updated. And dress code has been an issue there have been concerns from parents and all that, because when you get into where you are like physically measuring things like, you can't have shorts so many inches and things like that. And there were some of the things I think that don't even apply, like the example, the triple fat goose jackets and all of that, because I mean, people haven't worn those for 20 years. So to bring it up to date and to make it consistent in something that's like defensible where it would be equal, because like one of the examples, I know you have boys that they'll wear like the muscle shirts that are cut down to here for the armholes, and those are technically permissible, where if a girl wore the same thing, then she would not be allowed to do that. So now that would basically be outlawed for both, because it doesn't cover those areas. And so it just makes it consistent. So that I think it was just a lot of feedback was, can we make something that's manageable and consistent for everybody?
I think this is, personally, I just think this is going to be way worse to manage. And again, that's why I asked in that meeting if it was, if we had major issues, and I was told that we didn't. And what was said was that it's hard for administrators who are mostly male to say something to the young ladies if they had a dress code or they were going to dress code them, and they would look at them and say, well, why are you looking? So my concern is, taking that same logic, how easy is it going to be for them now with showing this to, and I've talked to parents and showed them this and other teachers and other schools and said, am I crazy to think this? And maybe if I'm the only one, that's fine. But it just seems to me that I get updating it and triple
Yeah.
fat goose and taking things out. I mean, okay, but we're going from like one extreme to the other. And to say, again, I liken it with the boys, I guess. And I get not wanting to treat people different, but I mean, for history, I mean, it's guys play shirts and skins in basketball. Are we not going to allow that? Are we going to not allow go into practices and tell them not to, not to take their shirts off, or in football, not to, when they're walking from the field to the locker room, that's all. I just see
Yeah,
this
no, I
more,
understand.
I see this as more problematic. I think you did a lot of good things, and I
Yeah.
think updating it's a great idea, and all the stuff you're doing is great ideas. So it's not really negative. I just think it's
Yeah.
going to be more for that person that wants to stretch the limits. This gives them the perfect opportunity.
Well, Mr. Drew, both Ms. Berkmeyer and myself sat on this committee and totally hear what you're saying, which is why we do have in there near the end that specialized, courses need specialized attire, like, sports, like swim and dive. I mean, all that. And then the second to last little section says the administration at each school reserves the right to determine what constitutes appropriate dress. And my goal going in was to make it equitable, not sexualize our female students by saying that because their bodies are developing differently, that they should be singled out in any way. But we still have that fail safe in there that administrators can do that. And I also trust our parents to know what's appropriate dress and to guide their children. And this just, it makes it more gender neutral. It doesn't target our young ladies. And we still have fail safes in there for sports, for, administration being able to say, okay, that's too much, if there's something that we haven't thought of.
I'd speak to Ms. Knox as well. I agree with everything she said. And, coming from a female myself who is 5'10", growing up in the 90s, you couldn't find at the time any sort of Bermuda shorts or something to the like that were long enough that would have been able for me to ever wear shorts to school, which I just found unfair, honestly, because I'm tall and my legs are longer, and you don't even have to be tall. If your legs are proportionally a little longer, you're screwed, frankly. And I think almost every single female can probably attest to the fact that at some point through their schooling, they think to themselves, what part of my spaghetti strap tank top is provocative? And why is this a problem? It's not, because we know it's not. And I think we all would agree that. And I recognize like the concerns that you've brought up, but I think there are some catch-alls on here where we can still, give our administrators some leeway if there are gaps that a student wants to find, they can address them. We can always come back, update the policy as necessary if we're dealing with loopholes of some kind. But I think that this was a very equitable thing to do going forward. And it was supported across the board, including by our high school as well as middle school administration. I can also say, as a parent of a middle school female, there was also some differences just between buildings of what was allowed. And it's confusing, frankly. As a board member and a parent of a 6th grade girl, my daughter's coming home the first days of school saying, I can wear my crop top shirt. And I'm like, no, you cannot. I'm having this argument with her because I've read the dress code. I know you cannot wear that. But then I pick her up from school and I see what the other kids are wearing. Do I personally care if she wore a somewhat crop top shirt to school that I found okay? No. Do I think she should follow the rules for the sake of following the rules? Yes. But it leaves me as a parent in a black hole of, okay, so what's really going on here? Our administrators, for better or worse, I don't fault them, but nobody's going to fully admit to say, I don't really address that. So we're kind of doing it for them. And we're coming back and we're fixing some of those things, trying to make it equitable, trying to take gender out of it more or less as much as we can, and kind of come up with some language that affects everybody equally.
I mean, some of the other changes were, I mean, we don't say we allow hats, but you used to not be able to wear hats. Now you can. I am so sorry. That was a discussion with Principal McKenzie at the high school and Amanda DePape, our Director of Security. So, and there were other things that changed, like you could do that. I remember once somebody brought up about wearing pajama bottoms to school, and we had one teacher, I think it was the teacher, who said, you know what, as long as they're there, like if they got up and got into school, and that's what we want every kid to feel comfortable and not targeted and things like that. So it is looser in other ways as well.
So I guess what I'll say, I'm a father of 3 daughters, so I know completely their struggles sometimes in clothing and what they want to wear. I got all across the board right now, a 20-year-old, a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old, and went through all that. I don't consider it targeting the girls of the school when it comes to dress code and showing off too much. I mean, that's been throughout history. I would say you've been an administrator for how long? I mean, that is a problem that dress code mainly deals with. And then other things, stuff, abusive language and stuff. So I don't see it as a way that we're targeting them. I'm not trying to target the young ladies. I understand they want to. I don't understand. I'm not a woman, so I'm not going to say that I understand it, but just knowing my daughters and the way that they are. But I feel like there's contradiction up here when we say our administrators, we leave a catch-all that if it's, the administration at each school reserves the right, but you're telling me the reason you're doing this is because administrators feel uncomfortable saying something to them because the girls are then saying back to them, well, why are you looking? So now we're going to make it even harder for them by making it looser. That's all that's my main concern of, and I didn't just do this on my own. I talked to other people to say, again, am I screwed up? Am I always the guy that's got to be against stuff? And I'm not against a lot of the stuff you guys did. You guys did a great work. I just think this is going to, and it may not, but it just seems to me it's going to cause more problems.
But to speak to that, what was your one of the things that was on the old one was no cleavage, no excessive cleavage. So now that left it up to an administrator to determine what's cleavage, what's excessive, so on and so forth.
Correct.
If they find a loophole, our administrators have been dress coding for years. They know how to do it, but I think it's gonna relieve some issues. And again, like I said, I trust our parents to know what's appropriate, inappropriate, what you think is okay for your child to wear to school. Unless you're like me and went and put on makeup at school and then took it off before I went home, but
I was going to say, what people wear when they're leaving the house as to what they wear when they're showing up at school is completely different.
Right.
So this is not a shot at any
Are you
parents.
speaking from experience, sir?
I'm just saying
I agree with you.
I'm not picking on any parent or any kid. They're kids. This is what they do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the kids that any run of the mill students is going to be fine. And I'll hold it up there. I don't want to take up all night just saying this, but I just worry that that's going to be problematic. That's all.
Well, let's see what
And if
happens.
it is,
Then
we can
we'll
come back and
readdress it.
adjust. Correct.
Absolutely.
One thing I'd like to add on there too, before we
Yeah,
turn
go
this
ahead.
to a vote. The comment that Mr. Drew made, I don't think we fully really addressed it. The idea that there's administrators out there. I mean, do we have female administrators who would
yeah,
take the
we do.
role if there's, so they don't get caught in that trap of, well, why are you looking? We're like, well, I'm a female, so it's not really an issue. So we can kind of cover it with that, and sort of delegate in that way.
All right, any additional comments?
I do have one. I noticed on the committee members, it does have Mr. Latone and Mr. McKenzie and Mr. Teedy. I know at the high school level, for the most part, the assistant principals do a lot of the discipline. From a middle school level, is Mr. Latone and Mr. Teedy the ones that are enforcing the dress code, or is that also done at an assistant principal level?
It would be both. They would, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And certainly one of the committee members was our director of secondary ed. Mr. McDonald's actually in the audience. Director of secondary ed, but also was our high school principal. So if we feel like we want to direct some questions that the 2 board reps didn't answer, we certainly have Mr. McDonald that was part of the committee. If there's something anybody wants to direct, to him, he's here. If not, I will move along. I think we're going to call a roll on this one just to make sure that we kind of record everybody's position on passing this because if this is approved, it will become policy. So, Mr. Secretary.
Motion was made by Mr. Richards, and it's a yes. Support by Ms. Burkmeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. DeRue,
Yes.
and Mr. Green.
Thank you. Yes.
All right.
All right, motion carries. Moving on down our agenda, the next item is a lease for district property for installation and operation of solar project and equipment. Let me get to that here on my computer. Before the board this evening is a motion to approve the negotiation and entering of a lease for approximately 40 acres just north of the high school to Native Flow Energy LLC for the installation and operation of a solar project. This would be an initial due diligence term of 120 days for the leasee to assess the suitability of the site. If the site is deemed suitable, the leasee, under the current terms of the draft agreement, would pay Anchor Bay School District $2,200 per acre per year with a 2% escalator of the lease payment each year. The draft lease also calls for an initial lease term of 25 years with options to extend the lease into the future. A lease of the property as described above for the initial 25 years would result in the district receiving roughly rental revenue of a little over $2.8 million during that span of the 25 years. The recommendation from administration is that the Board of Education approve the negotiation and entering of a lease for approximately 40 acres just north of the high school to Native Flow Energy LLC for the installation and operation of a solar project. With all of that mouthful said, I will entertain a motion to approve as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. DeRue,
I'll second.
supported by Mr. Vendatelli. Let's have some discussion. A lot of hesitation there. So is there any discussion that we want to have tonight?
I just like to open it up. I like the idea of having a solar farm and having them, you know, with the contract that's laid out. I don't like the placement. I think we could probably make ourselves a little more versatile by not having a plot of land that's just north of the high school taken up by a solar field. That's very hard to move. We have some, you know, potential future purchases going through and, or, you know, negotiations to occur. And I think we might have more bargaining chip if we could just say like, well, we really don't need your space because we have, you know, other space that's so close to the high school. And I think that kind of closes some doors where otherwise we'd have a little more bargaining room. So to summarize, I like the idea. I want it somewhere else.
All right. Anyone else? Any comments or feedback?
My question right now is more based off of what Mr. Vinatieri said, because I believe that the way the lease is written right now, though, is for this particular plot, correct?
Yes, yeah, and part of it is they need, and Todd can, because he worked with them on this. They need access to the grid, and so that's why they're looking there, because there's already, it backs up to the industrial, so there's already the power grid capabilities there to, that's their main interest in that parcel, because obviously they have to feed it back into the grid.
So I guess, Todd, do we have other properties that would entertain?
We had some brief discussions about other possibilities. This was the only site that they were interested in. And for the reasons that Phil just explained.
So how much would it cost for them to hang a couple more power lines to connect a plot that's further off to the grid?
I think the issue is they want to be within 5 miles of the power plant. If it goes longer than that, I don't know whether it's an expense issue or, you know, the electricity doesn't, you know, have is an effective enough transfer. I don't know what the issue is, but that was kind of their parameters, that it had to be within 5 miles of a power station.
Was there any discussion, not that they're entering into the lease, but with our neighbors at the Rock, since it'll be right behind them too? I mean, we just have such a good relationship with them. Not that that would make or break our decision, but was there any discussion with them or can there not be at this point?
Well, they have asked for a certain confidentiality levels. Certainly, we have to negotiate through that because we are subject to FOIA and we cannot provide that level of confidentiality that they're currently asking for. That said, they will look at the 40 acres. It might be 40 acres, that are shifted away from the Rock Church. I think that we'll know a lot more after the suitability study as to where they want, because really the parcel that they're looking at is about 62 acres. And so they're only looking at 40 of the 62. So it could be where it's not right on top of the church is a possibility, depending on where they want to locate that 40 acres.
Yeah, there's not room. There's just an access road that's left behind there, basically. So it would be, if you think of that parcel, it's kind of shaped like Oklahoma with the panhandle of the access
Yeah.
road. So it'll
Yeah, I
be
saw that.
over in the
Yeah.
main body of it.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Am I correct and correct me if I'm wrong, that the other party is able to break this lease if they need to or desire, but we are not?
We shared the lease agreement as it's been presented to us. In the motion, I think there is some discussion about allowing us to enter into negotiations before we sign off on any sort of lease. So certainly, Lisa, that's a consideration that we would want to address, or a clause we would want to address. I think, like I said earlier, there's the confidentiality that we would want to address. So I think we shared that contract just as kind of a starting point, but certainly negotiations need to take place before we would sign.
So this is, to your comment, Ms. Burkmeyer, it is a 30-day out for them. And it's a one-way street. And the other thing that's a one-way street is the 120-day due diligence in the contract. They have that 120-day due diligence. We don't. But correct me if I'm wrong, either one of you guys, we are just authorizing the superintendent or his designee to negotiate this lease. This lease will come back in front of us again for final approval. Is that correct?
Well,
That-
At the
motion is
pleasure of the board.
negotiate and enter at the pleasure of the board.
Yeah, that's my concern is that first line, approve the negotiation and entering of a lease.
It-
I don't like that second half.
Well,
Our approval starts the lease.
It authorizes the superintendent or his designee to sign on the board's behalf after they've negotiated the lease.
yeah, our goal is you have what's probably, 90% of the way there. And then if there's stipulations that you're looking for in order to have that, then we'll make sure that they're in there. So we know, like, for one, they have the confidentiality. We cannot provide that. That has to come out because the agreement would be subject to FOIA anyhow.
Yeah, and just a little bit back to Mr. Vintelli's comment, just for curiosity, where is the power plant? Is it towards Marine City? Do we know?
I believe it is towards,
Yeah. I
further
think it's
down
one-
towards
Yeah, it's right
Marine
down
City.
Marine City.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The consumers, that's right there.
As you go further east on
East, yeah.
26 miles.
So we're
Between County
speculating
Line and
It's already
Beefway?
there.
Right, that's where we're
Yes.
speculating they're trying to get to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's County Line and Beefway in between
Yeah,
consumers? or
in
what?
that area.
That's what they'd be
Gotcha.
tying into.
Okay. All right.
On the
Yes.
right side as you're going east, right? Tim?
Right.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
That's just gas.
They just did a bunch of work out there, so.
Any other questions or comments?
I mean, I would like that they have their exclusivity period of 120 days and then the previous 30. I would like to wait and see what they have to say after doing that, because if they want to change anything, then I would like to revisit it. So I think, for them, for that first part, that's okay, but I want to see what they come back with and what they're going to do, because if they haven't really.
Yeah.
So would you want to have the motion amended to remove the entering into the lease portion and just have it state that the motion is to approve the negotiation of a lease?
Personally, I would be more comfortable with that.
I don't know who made the motion. Mr. Secretary, who made the motion and the support?
Mr. Jurek had the motion.
Richards did. Yeah, I'd be willing to make that change.
No, didn't Mr.
I made the
You
motion.
made the motion.
I'm sorry.
I'm looking at his notes and he's got the first day jitters, so
Yeah,
I
Don't-
don't know.
yeah.
I guess my question, what else would we do with that piece of land we're looking at? And the other thing is, I believe that this company said that they would work with our students when they're building this.
Yeah.
So with
Correct.
solar power being a big, industry of the future or currently and more of it, I just talked with Todd today. I mean, him coming back with the building trades class and what we're doing, we're possibly building those houses on the south side of the school. What they're doing right now with all the building going on. And if this company's gonna take our students over there, I think that it brings in revenue. It's something to do with that plot of land. I mean, I just don't see any real negative here. So to hold them back, I mean, I get the 120-day out, like Lisa brought up, or, any little things like that, maybe put something in there that, they got to run something by the president before final signing. So
Oh,
that,
no, you're not putting. this
well,
on me.
or, I mean, just
I
something.
decline that, sir.
Okay, well, I don't have personally, I don't have a problem with when they're at that table negotiating, especially with a company like that probably has, because they're gonna bring revenue into somewhere wherever they go. And it's a lot. So I just think that we'd be handcuffing our administration if we believe in it, in theory, we're handcuffing them by not giving them that ability to sign that day. Unless you think.
Well, that's part of the concern, yes,
Yeah.
is that, to go down the path of negotiating, for however long it takes to negotiate the deal and then bringing it back, if the board is not interested at this point in time, I would hate to waste both parties' time negotiating to only have it come back and say, no, this isn't something we're interested in. So that was the idea of, kind of going forward. And to your point, John, if this is something the board believes in, that would be helpful for us to know. If it's not something the board would like to do or believes in, then, I'd prefer that we not move forward and negotiate so that we're acting in good faith with this company.
So at this point, I'd like to keep the motion the way it is. I understand your concerns and we'll see where it goes, but I think if there's anything, I would be willing to amend it, or you guys can make an amendment to it to Ms. Burkmeyer's concern of make sure we both, which I think Todd and Bill would do, make sure that there's an out on both sides, a confidentiality thing or whatever needs to be done. So.
No, and the other concern that we've already talked about is, because right now they want, like, hey, if this is going well in 25 years, we can roll it over 4 years at a time, I believe.
Yeah.
And that would have to be mutual, because in 25 years, who knows where we're at?
Who's here, who's
Yeah,
doing what?
yeah.
So I think to Mr. Drew's point, Mr. Jankowski and Mr. Ethbun are both experienced negotiators, contract law, leases. So I think we've been clear with kind of where we stand on this. So why don't we move on the motion? We'll see what the results of that are and determine if we need to take a different
I
direction.
just have one last question.
Yes, sir.
Have we had our legal team review this agreement?
No, we wanted to gauge the temperature of the board and find out if indeed you're interested in doing, a deal of this nature.
Sure.
If that's the case, certainly before we sign anything, we will run this past Trune and they will vet it to make sure that
All right.
it complies with all the regulatory and state laws.
And that's true with all of the contracts that we enter into, is we make sure we get that outside
Yeah.
legal opinion, so we're not
Sure.
getting ourselves in trouble. All right, so with that, if no one has any more comments, we will call a roll for this one as well. So everybody has a chance to voice their opinion.
All
Mr.
right.
Secretary.
Motion was made by Mr. Daru.
Yes.
It was supported by Mr. Vinatieri.
No.
Ms. Knox?
No.
Ms. Burkmeyer?
No.
Mr. Richards? No. Mr. Green?
No. All right, so the motion fails to pass for support. Is there any further conversation or additional motion that wants to come out of this discussion before I move on?
I don't like saying no to this, because I like the idea. I like the revenue could bring. And like Mr. Drew mentioned, I like the possibility of showing the kids a little bit about how renewable works. I just don't like the placement and in the current climate of what we're trying to do with regards to the future of the district and finding placement for future schools and whatnot. I just think it's the wrong spot to put it. And that's purely the only reason why I'm against this idea. I think we could work out the contract. I think we could kind of break through the terms and make an agreement that's amenable for both of us. But it really just has to be location.
Any additional comments?
For me, it's just about the option of entering into a lease and when we're kind of locked in with their 30 and their 120-day exclusivity period. We don't have that same option. If we did, I'd be fine with it. If we had some sort of out, it even says at one point, I can't find it right now, up to 40 acres and they'll determine what that 40 acres is at a later time. It's just for me, writing contracts for a living, it's too open-ended and kind of blocking us in a corner. Not that I'm against it. Little bit of, flexibility for us would make me much more comfortable with it.
I guess on that, if that's what we're.
Yeah, go ahead, Chuck.
That's what we just talked about. We just said we would put those things in there. Said we would put in there that there's an out for both sides. And we said we would put in there the stuff, any concerns it's fine, it went down, but any concerns, that's exactly what we just talked about, is that we were gonna put in there. That was just a sample agreement that they put out. That's their best case scenario, and they're never gonna get their best case scenario. Because there's another side to the negotiating table. My concern, Mr. Vinatelli, is one, that's why I asked what other things we would be looking to put on that piece of property. And I don't see, other than industry, there's not much else you would be looking to put. You wouldn't be looking to put a school up there. You wouldn't be looking to do any of that type of stuff. And with the grid being right there with consumers right there, to say you could go make another agreement with them somewhere else, it's just not going to happen. Companies like that just aren't going to do it. And it's fine. We'll figure something else out, but you're going to be looking at industry up there. And that to me looked like a good one, with being a solar plant, being able to work with our students, being able to provide that revenue and stuff. That was all. It is what it is. We'll figure it out. But so I just wanted to say, that's exactly what we were just talking about, was to make that contract more advantageous to our side too, and totally agree with you.
Right, you bring that back?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and with regards to that spot, I know, I understand the nature of the location. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had, and I want to be a little general because I think we're delving into stuff that was a little bit closed session, but there were some other groups of industry that were interested in, taking part in that land to kind of expand some operations and whatnot. And not only that, but there's sportsplexes and other things we could do with that property. So it's not just that we're going to build a school. There's other things we could put on there.
I just want to say this for the record, sportsplex is kind of a bad word around here.
Mr. Richards.
One thing I also like to add too is I know that with that area being in Ira Township, I know there's a lot of zoning changes coming up or are on the ballot. So I'm not sure how that will affect, with them looking for land versus what we have too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and just to be clear on this, that this will end negotiations basically.
So that was what I was going to ask Mr. Pankowski, if there's anybody who was interested in moving this along at a different pace or with some different parameters, so that before we close this door in the next 30 seconds, if there's something else somebody wants to make a motion, to make a change, obviously giving the authority to negotiate and sign isn't what was the pleasure of the board. So again, I'll give a 10-second pause here before I move on. If somebody wants to make a motion, wants to change something, wants to do something different. Again, once we leave this, we're done for at least 30 days. And even
'cause
then, it would,
our concern is we want to get parameters up, because we don't want to be in a situation where we don't have parameters, we go into it, or we do have parameters and we settle on those parameters with them, and then it gets shot down after we do that.
Okay, if we changed it, motion to approve the negotiation and entering of a tentative lease per full board approval or something like that, I I would make that motion and
I think the concern that Mr. Rathbun already mentioned is that if there isn't an appetite for pursuing this, that there's a concern that we'll invest time and money and hours into negotiating a lease, bring it back to the board, and then it won't pass. If I'm correct with Mr. Rathbun. So I'm not saying that's what you're after, but that's certainly what his concern would be if we did approve a motion along those lines.
can we add that to the agenda if this is something that we would like to do and then go on to this?
So would you like to make a motion to enter in these negotiations with some terms on there? Is that where you're going after at this point? Just I'd be open to that too, if that's, what we want to do. We can have a vote
That's
on
really
that,
what we're
Mr.
looking
Drew,
for
and-
because
Well, that's what I was gonna say is I don't know if this is a proper motion, but to make a motion, because we just made a motion to enter and agree and that
Approve,
is-
approve and enter in.
approve and enter into a lease. I mean, you essentially be making, but would make a motion to say approve and enter into a lease with the following conditions, but I don't know what those conditions are because I would need those conditions from you guys. How would we do that so that we can?
well, if it's the major things, I mean, and we can kind of, and feel free to chime in. So the 120 days, that's for them in order to see if the site, because again, with other discussions we've had with other people who are interested in that. This is our logic on it is one, we're not selling it. We'll still have it. The odds that we're going to do anything with it over 25 years are slim and none.
Correct.
And part of the issue with other entities is whether they're building factories or whatever, is we know the capacity of County Line Road is not going to change over that time. So anything we do that's going to put more traffic out there is just a problem. So this is actually a good solution because there's no traffic except for maybe once or twice you'll have somebody going there. And you get the benefits of it. And part of the lease is that they will return it. If we want them to, they will return it to its state. And the other part of it is we know that most of the surrounding land is potentially wetland. So they have to go through that process. That's the 120 days it kind of goes through it. But it's not as big of a deal if it's a solar array as it is if it was an actual structural building. So that's why our belief is this is kind of a really good like opportunity for the district. And because how often are you going to have this? And it's the parcel land is close enough that it fits all their needs. So
And-
to move it someplace else will be a challenge.
What's the process? I think you just mentioned that if we wanted them to, you remove the solar panels and place it somewhere else. So they could, I mean, it's not a building, so you can pick it up and move it. What's the process for that? Like, how much would that cost? And is there any kind of cost to the school?
Well, yeah,
district can do that?
To the school district, no, that's how the lease is structured, that when they turn, so if they decide,
But it's 25 years before we could make that demand.
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
But it's part of it, if they're going to invest,
They
they're
want
not
long-term.
going to give us an out
Right.
because they're putting significant capital outlay.
Multi-million-dollar project.
If they have a 30-day out to let us know, but part of that is they have to pull everything out. That's our, like,
I think I saw
That's our hammer.
within 12 months, they
Yeah.
have to
within 12
remove
months, yeah. So,
everything,
it-
if they decide to leave in 5 years.
yeah,
Mr. Rathbun, did you have a comment? I know you're back up.
I was just gonna say that, the 120 days of exclusivity, that's really their due diligence period, right? And that's pretty common for developers, 120, 180 days, for all the reasons Phil really talked about, the zoning, the wetlands, making sure that the property's suitable to their needs. I don't think it's a crazy amount of time for them to have. And at this point, there's nothing that we have in the works right now, in the next 120 days on that particular property that they would be blocking or holding us up on. So that piece I'm not too concerned about. But certainly all of the other items that you've raised are of concern for us, and
Yeah.
certainly we want to address those in the negotiation.
I think I would, I don't know if you can like redo a motion, with the understanding that obviously it would go to Trune and just make sure that it's fair, so we're not backed into a corner and stuck and, can't move.
So we voted down this motion.
We did.
We have to modify it in some way, shape or form to
Mhm.
revote. So even if I read it to you and change one word, that counts as constitutes this changing.
Sure.
Because I don't think there's a substantiality clause in changing a motion.
No, and if you have concerns, please put them in it. That's what I'd say. Hey, these are the things that we want to see.
So
Okay.
going back around the board, if we're gonna go and possibly make another motion and see if the board has an appetite for some changes. Mr. Drew, you've spoke. What do you want to see in here in this next motion that personally, we'll kind of make our way around? You know, I know Ms. Knox, you might have some changes, but I have no problem with making another motion. Let's figure out what we want.
Yeah, I'm personally was good with that because you know, like you said, I have faith in our administration here, Todd and Phil, to make sure that they handle the things in this contract that are gonna make sense, and hearing more of what the 120-day means as far as their due diligence. Yeah, I mean, that's standard operating business for somebody that's gonna be doing that much work on a piece of property. And then if they even try to get out, I mean, once they have the solar array up and to return it to that point, Dominic, is that they, to bring our land back up to the same probably EPA standards and everything that it was, that's a lot of money. That's a lot. I can tell you most power plants, because if they close or things like solar arrays like that, they'll keep them idling. Like US Steel right now has been closed for years, but they stay idling because it's cheaper to idle, have nobody there and just pay to keep things kind of running than to actually try to bring it back up to EPA standards. So I don't necessarily have a problem. I don't think we've talked about that piece of property since I've been on this board for a while. This is I commend you guys on your work here and what you've done, and to filter it in with where we're going to get revenue. We're going to have a long-term lease with them. It's still our property and they're going to work with our students. I just think it's a no-brainer. So I'd be happy to make another motion that says subject to legal, and then that would give it.
I got
Legal
that.
review.
Ms. Knox, anything else you'd want to see in here?
No, I think that would be good.
Is there anyone else on the board? And I will ask for a motion, adding that the lease will be subject to approval of outside legal counsel into the motion. Is there anything else that we want to add? And then I'm looking for a motion maker.
I will make a motion to,
Probably got to read the whole thing just to make it
Yeah.
official. And if you want to add that
yep.
at the end, that might get it.
Okay.
for you.
Motion is before the board this evening is a motion to approve the negotiation and entering of a lease for approximately 40 acres just north of the high school to Native Flow Energy LLC for the installation and operation of a solar project. There would be an initial due diligence term of 120 days for the lessee to assess the suitability of the site. If the site is deemed suitable, the lessee, under the current terms of the draft agreement, would pay Anchor Bay School District $2,200 per acre per year, with a 2% escalation of the lease payment each year. The draft lease also calls for an initial lease term of 25 years with options to extend the lease in the future. Lease will be subject to approval of outside legal counsel. A lease of the property as described above for the initial term of 25 years would result in the district receiving rental revenue of over $2.8 million.
All right, I have a motion on the floor from Ms. Knox. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Drew. Although I think we've talked this enough, I will afford one more opportunity. Hearing none, sir, we will call a roll call vote again.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Drew,
Yes.
Mr. Vantilli,
No.
Ms. Berkmeyer,
No.
Mr. Richards. I'll do yes. Mr. Green.
Yes.
You have a yes.
Motion carries 4-2, sir. Is that correct? My math correct, sir? Secretary there?
That is
Take your
correct.
Shoes off. Cal?
Yes,
Stop
yes.
them over Motion carries. Let's move on down to award recommendations. Item number 4. Let me scroll down here just a second. I know that we are adding a dishwasher as well as a walk-in cooler into Great Oaks, but let me get to the official motion here. Todd, if we could shorten up our contracts, that would be great. After all that, I tell them to do that. Scrolling, stand by. Our board packet was 93 pages, so I elected to save a tree and not print it today, so. Still going. Okay, award recommendation, Food Service Department. A request for food service at Great Oaks, including a walk-in cooler and dishwasher, was uploaded to Sigma on 1/16 of 2024. Only 2 bids were received, one from Chef's Depot and one from Stafford Smith, Inc. Stafford Smith Incorporated is the lowest bidder. They are also the only bidder that attended the voluntary walkthrough at Great Oaks Elementary. Wow. We are confident that they understand the space and what we are looking for. Both vendors met the specification guidelines spelled out in the bid. Both vendors' totals included freight installation charges. Both equipment items are on the MDE pre-approved food service equipment list. And you guys received those bids in your bid packet. The recommended action from our administration is that the Board of Education approve the award to Stafford Smith Incorporated for the Great Oaks walk-in cooler and dishwasher bid in the amount of $75,212.00. I will entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Support.
I have a motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Ms. Berkmeyer. Questions and further discussion? I know that I had inquired earlier today with the superintendent, and Mr. Jankowski indicated that due to the quantity of lunches that we're doing under this free student lunch program, that we don't have the capacity at many of our schools. And I think you've already touched on this briefly in his comments, that we don't have the equipment, we don't have the storage space to feed this many people, because we're kind of busting at the seams, if you will, in terms of food. So that was why the request came in, and that is why it is sitting on your agenda. So if nobody has any further comments, it's only 75,000. So we're going to go with all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on down to item 5. It is time for the MASB annual election for their board of directors. And I'm scrolling down to get to the, I believe we are in Region 8. And the Region 8 candidates, if I can get down there. Are Melody Hines from Wayne Westland, Bridget McQuiston. Those people are out there. I apologize for butchering your names. Lake Orion Community Schools, and then Evelyn Pridemore from Redford Union School District in Redford. Those are the 3 candidates that are on our slate. I would entertain a motion at this point. Before I do that, in your board packet were, let's call them resumes, if you will, of the 3 candidates. So at this point, I will entertain a motion of which candidate the Anchor Bay Board of Education wishes to select or vote for the Region 8 MASB candidate.
I'd like to make a motion to elect Birgit McQuiston, the incumbent.
Do I have a second for Ms. McQuiston?
I'll second.
Great. I got a motion from Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Richards. Any further discussion on this candidate or any of the other candidates before we move on?
Just that I think Ms. Berkmeyer should be in the running next time.
That has been noted.
Support.
That has been noted as well, although I think we already have a motion on the floor, so I don't believe we can have 2 on the floor at the same time, but I appreciate your enthusiasm. Would you like to amend the agenda to add that to the next agenda item?
No.
Oh. Hearing no support for that. All those in favor of supporting Ms. McQuiston for the MASB Board of Directors signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We are going to move on to the new course approval. Let me get down here to my motion after I get scrolling here. Looks like a page down key would be awesome in this thing. Yeah, I don't see one.
No.
All right. New course requests were submitted by teachers and approved by the building administrators and the Director of Secondary Education. These courses were reviewed by the curriculum committee. Approval is needed to include them in the course guide. The courses would run based on student request and demand. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the new courses presented for the 2024 and 2025 school year. So I will entertain a motion to approve the new course list as approved, as submitted to you in your packet.
I would like to make a motion. I was on this committee. But my motion is going to be a little different. My motion is to approve the submitted courses that are listed before you, with the exception of weight training and fitness for girls, physical education for girls 9th, and team sports for girls. So my motion is to approve all of the other courses that are listed. And we can maybe circle back and discuss these ones and either move forward or not move forward. But first, I would like to motion to approve the others.
So for the purposes of your motion, can you state again, you want to approve all of the courses that have been provided to you with the exception of a select few, and you'd like to remove them and discuss them individually?
Or honestly,
Or as a
for
group?
me, they can just be as personally, I can lump them together.
Yeah.
but
Okay,
Yeah.
which courses did you want to remove from this approval?
Weight training and fitness for girls, physical education for girls 9th, and team sports for girls.
All right, do I have a support for that motion?
Support.
I have a motion by Ms. Berkmeyer, supported by Ms. Knox, to modify the original motion that was read and segregate out 3 of the classes to be discussed after the other ones are voted upon. Is there any other discussion before we move on Ms. Berkmeyer's motion?
So I would just say, personally, I would prefer if we could maybe, we can discuss all the other courses at this point, if that's what anyone would like to do. And then obviously move on the next ones, whether we do or don't move on them. But I sat on the curriculum committee, and we went through each of these courses, what they would look like. And for the purpose of the motion, with all of these ones, except the ones I pulled out, I think they seem like great opportunities, good opportunities for our students. Also opening up more electives and pathways, just to give kids different experiences and, different interests that we obviously don't already offer. So I am in support of those.
Any additional comments before we move on the motion?
I had some concerns also. And I guess to Ms. Berkmeyer's motion, the question that I had, and you guys maybe can give me a little more information on it, but with the conditioning for athletes, if I understand this correctly, that the only way to participate in this particular class, you have to be involved in an Anchor Bay athletic program. Is that kind of how this class is structured? So if I'm an Anchor Bay student and I'm athletic and I just don't have any time or interest for Anchor Bay sports, maybe I go to an outside program, whether it's soccer or basketball or weightlifting. I do not qualify to attend. I wouldn't qualify to attend this particular class.
I believe the intent is not to necessarily exclude, and Mr. McDonald can
Right.
chime in here as well. It is sports-specific training, so it would benefit those who are in a particular sport because they will be training their particular
All right,
sport.
so I wouldn't necessarily have to be involved in an Anchor Bay specific sport.
Mr. McDonald, did you hear his question?
Yes, I did. And I think Phil answered it correctly. It is specifically for athletes, our student athletes. However, there would still be weight training courses available for students who are not on athletic teams.
So if I have a student, or if I am a student that is involved in other athletics outside of I'm sorry, I lost it here. the class is conditioning for athletes. So is that a particular class that is going to be weightlifting only, or is that going to,
It would be additional other, training and conditioning.
okay,
Not just weights.
Yeah, look, let's say, for example, you have a freshman who wants to go out for basketball. And so they would do basketball type training as part of that.
okay.
They wouldn't necessarily have to be on the basketball team because again, if they take it at the beginning of the year and they're not on the team until later, that's not going to,
Okay.
there is no prerequisite for it, is there? Be on a sport?
No, but the way it was presented was it was for, offered for students participating in the athletic program.
Right, that's how I read it too. So I have to be part of the athletic program to participate in the class. I would like to add, if possible, Ms. Berkmeyer, if you could be interested in doing amendment as well. I'd like to add that separately as well. I have a problem, approving such class like that.
I am amenable to adding that to the list of exceptions for the conditioning for athletes, if Ms. Knox is as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so the motion has been amended. So we have now pulled out 4 of the classes from the original motion. Any other comments before we move on the initial motion, less the 4 courses? And I feel like I want to call a roll call with this one again because got a lot going on here.
It's not on there. It's on the second page. Just make up your own title.
So I believe the motion was by Ms. Berkmeyer and supported by Ms. Knox.
All righty. Ms. Berkmeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes, Mr. DeRue,
Yes.
and Mr. Green.
Yes, so the motion carries. I will kind of turn this back over to Ms. Berkmeyer because we've now segregated 4 classes out. So if I don't know if you want to go through and make a motion for each individual course, or you want to group the 4 together. I know, Mr. Richards, you had a concern and a request to modify as well. So I will entertain a motion of however you guys want to move forward.
So my trouble is I want to speak on these items, but I don't particularly want to entertain a motion for them. So,
I think in order to be able to have the ability to speak,
Correct.
that we have to
so
entertain.
somebody else would have to entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion to approve all 3 of the girls' sports or the girls' classes that because I'm guessing that's all gonna, well, the 4th, I think, is a
Yeah.
You
different.
want to so you want to separate out?
Separate them, I believe, is
Okay.
because I believe your concern's probably gonna be for those 3 is gonna be the same concern.
All
or
right, so
no?
I have a motion to discuss the first 3 that were set
Yes.
aside. And then we'll tackle that 4th one. Do I have a support for that motion?
Support.
All right, Mr. DeBrew and Ms. Knox supporting. Let's go with another roll call.
Well,
Great.
no, I think the discussion, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. We do want to have discussion, don't we? My
Yeah,
bad.
I'd like to hear what her
I'm just trying to hurry things along.
concerns are.
My bad.
Personally, I am not in this environment for separating male and female. Currently, my understanding is we offer some of these courses, the phys ed type courses, but they're more in the co-ed nature. I understand that the reasoning and rationale that was given in terms of offering some courses that say female, or weight training for girls, phys ed for girls, 9th, team sports for girls, was because of the observation of some instructors that sometimes there's maybe intimidation between male or female, or possibly, just differences in ability or interests and things like that, that might cause one group or another to maybe be standoffish with each other and thinking that perhaps girls might be more comfortable in their own course, which I don't necessarily disagree with. What I do disagree with is the fact that between Title IX and our civil rights laws, we literally cannot tell somebody they can't sign up for one of these courses based on gender. So I don't like the false idea that we're putting out there implying that we can and that we are. And so at this point, I'm just not for that. And I just think it's misleading in nature. So I'm not for it.
Mr. Drew, you supported? Do you want, I'll give you a second shot here if there's something you want to comment on, or?
I guess, understand your concern. I makes sense, I guess, if in the respect to Title IX and respect to misleading, I guess, if there's any part of that's misleading, but I can, if that's the argument they're making, that they're having, trouble with, females and males in the same weightlifting class or the same conditioning class or sports class, it does make sense to me that they would put all females into one class, that they can better train them in that sport or in that weight training. So I think it's, at the end of the day, would be better for the students, and it would be a more worthwhile class for them. And if a male decides to sign up for it, we can't stop them. But I guess if everything's legal with it, that would be something for you, Phil, if it's,
Yeah, we can get an opinion on it.
so if we want to get in, if it's illegal to do, well, then yeah, no. But I mean, if it's legal to have a class with that name, and our teachers and the people,
I don't disagree. I
leading
mean,
those classes up,
we
I
can
think
put the
that would
class
be,
out there and say, we're going to offer this, and that's kind of the intention. I understand that.
all right, so we're
But
just.
my
yeah.
problem is that at
interrupt
the end of
people
the
now.
day, we just can't, we can't exclude anybody. So why are we even advertising as if we might be? It just defeats, we've talked about equity and things, dress code, things like that.
Well, if you would have
The
listened
referendum
without
has
interrupting, I would
already
say that it's because I just said,
done
let's
that for
get
3
a,
years. So-
I get where you're at. Let's get an opinion. And if it's legal to do, and if our teachers who are teaching the courses say that they're seeing issues, they're trying to remedy that. And if you put them all in the same class, and it's better for those people in those classes, and they can get better weight training out of it, they can get better sports training out of it, it's good for the students. And that's what we're here to do. So I think if we get an opinion and it's legal to do, that's what we should do. So we don't need to get into this world of saying we can't do this or we can't do that because of whatever reason. I don't know. I mean, but it makes sense to me that putting all those girls in one class for weight training is going to make sense.
So I'll open it up to the rest of the board.
Yeah, I'd like to offer some clarity because Ms. Burkmeyer referenced civil rights laws that have been recently passed that limit the ability for us to have a specifically girls-only space. So I brought this with me today. I'm going to quote it. It's the Ella Larson Civil Rights Act. It's an expansion of it that was signed last year. Section 402, an educational institution shall not do any of the following. Part A of that, discriminate against an individual in the full utilization of or benefit from the institution or the services, activities, or programs provided by the institution because of religion, race, color, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression. So essentially what that means is if a boy wants to, want to be in a girl's class, we can't discriminate based on that because of what the law says. Ergo, if we put a class up there saying weight training for girls, it's basically a lie because there's no way that we could segregate the space.
That's literally what I just said. Is I get that. I was there for that signing of the Elliott Larson expansion. I understand what it says. I'm saying if it's legal for us to put that on with the intent of what we're trying to do, to me, it makes sense. And if it makes sense to our instructors and it makes sense to the students, if we can't do it, we can't do it. But let's just get an opinion. That's all I was asking for.
Mr. Richards?
Yeah, part of some of my concerns too were, if we were to have these types of classes and we didn't get enough girls, for example, to, participate in a girls only, type of program, I believe that the other classes would fill up predominantly with males, and it wouldn't allow, if there was a handful of girls that want to participate in the class, it doesn't allow them to join that particular class. For me also too, when I look at the conditioning for athletes, I think anchor-based students, we have a ton of talent, in our sports system. I also think that we have a lot of talent from students that do not participate in our sports systems. I don't know if it's a timing issue or they're not interested or they may not like the coach. But to me, if I had a class where I could have all my students participate, in a class, and I, as a coach, I I can see a student excelling in a certain sport or doing well and, you know, maybe by a coach approaching them and talking to them about, you know, some interest in joining a sport, you know, that might get them to join our athletic, you know, teams as well. But I think by limiting it to, you know, athletes only, it doesn't allow, you know, our entire student population to have a chance to participate in a class that they may be interested in.
Ms. Knox?
Yes. I also had concern about the girls only classes. I'd rather us tailor it to what a student hopes to get out of a physical fitness course. I'm not a PE teacher, not a teacher, not even close. I did look up some articles and things, and it was kind of split down the middle, because I was recalling that when I was in high school, and probably many of you, we had girls' gym and boys' gym. And I hadn't even realized that had changed. So I kind of read like, what's the difference? Why did it change? And there wasn't a clear cut thing. What I would rather see is, instead of focusing like, okay, team sports for girls, that's obviously not going to include football. We've had female football players in our school. I would rather see courses that may garner more attention from girls, like something like leisure sports. I talked about with someone, you know, things like pickleball, badminton, things like that. Maybe alternative fitness like yoga, things like that. That might, and then you can still have someone come in there. But I mean, if there's a girl kicker who wants to come work out with the guys and be part of that team and be part of that class, then she should be willing. So I think we should go towards what their strengths are, what their goals are personally, as opposed to, you belong in this class because you're a girl.
Correct. And I-
That's where I would take it. And plus I see with what Lisa's saying, the Title IX issue, and you know, what you quoted from Elliot Larson. It just seems like you're just setting yourself up for failure. I agree with Mr. Richards as well. I would rather see some different courses in those place that may achieve the same goal that's intended.
Correct. And that's what I would like to see it move towards, not to not offer more phys ed classes. I mean, certainly if we want to, I'd be happy to do that, but tailor them towards interest. So perhaps you offer more targeted classes like contact sports or something, leisure activities. I know that was back in my day, that was a gym class, and you know, you were playing shuffleboard and bowling and learning those sports. You know, so we can go towards contact sports, maybe, you know, the more physical. Anybody that wants to enroll with that, go for it. If you're not into that sort of thing, you have leisure sports, or you have swim, or you have aerobics, or you have yoga, or you have dance. I mean, you can diversify our offerings without making it based on gender, which we're not supposed to do anyway.
So it sounds, Mr. McDonald, like my board may be amicable to tabling this motion. Does that handcuff you in terms of getting this started and rolling in September? If I give you a 30-day pause on these three classes and the board takes some time to A, get a legal opinion, and B, kind of check with our constituents and figure out where we're at. Does that handcuff you from starting these three programs in September?
You know, I believe we could work around that
Okay.
within 30 days.
Ms. Knox?
Another class, when I was speaking with someone, was lifeguarding. We always have a shortage of lifeguards at the aquatic center. Why don't we make that a class? Then we'll have a stream of lifeguards as well.
So at this point, it looks like I would be open to entertaining a motion if we want to table the vote for these three classes. Obviously, we still have one more discussion that needs to take place. But if somebody wanted to make a motion to table this motion until the next meeting, allowing our superintendent to get a outside legal opinion, and all of us kind of to digest what we've read and what we've heard from each other and make another vote.
I think we already have a motion. Mr. Drew made a motion, I believe. Ms.
I
Knott.
think I can make
Yeah,
a
but if
motion.
somebody can make a.
We can make a motion to
we can
table
the
that motion.
yeah.
Okay.
I will make a motion to table Mr. DeRue's motion to approve these.
These three.
These three.
Right. Conditioning was not in that.
Do I have a support to table that motion for Mr. DeRue, I believe was the original motion maker? All right, any further discussion before we vote on tabling Mr. DeRue's motion? I'm gonna have to brush up on my skills.
Tabling.
All right, hearing no further discussion, let's call a roll on this one as well, sir. So this is to table Mr. Drew's motion until our next meeting, which is when? Anybody?
March
13th?
13th.
13th, to allow our superintendent to get a legal opinion on these three classes. You, sir.
The motion was by Ms. Knox,
Yes.
supported by Mr. Richards, which is a yes. Mr. Vinatieri?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Berkmeyer?
No.
Mr. DeRue?
Yes.
And Mr. Green?
Yes. All right, so the motion carries. We are going to table that motion for those three classes. That brings up the next class that Mr. Richards asked to be removed from the blanket approval of the courses. So I will, if you could remind me at this point, which class you had some concerns of, and then we'll see if we can get a motion out there and have some discussion.
Absolutely. Conditioning for athletes. Thank you.
All right, so I will entertain a motion at this point to approve the class conditioning for athletes for the 2024 and 2025 school year.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Drew, supported by Ms. Knox. Let's have some discussion.
So obviously
Joe.
you gave a little explanation, and I understand that, Dennis, in a way. But I would think the reason, and Mr. McDonald could probably explain it if I'm off base, but if class if it fills up quick, or if class limits are in place here, and you're trying to get your student athletes, people that play for the school, to get into those classes. Yeah, I'm okay with that class being limited to start with to Anchor Bay athletes who are playing for our school, who are representing our school. And in order to have a quality, which it's not, I know it's about education, about schooling, but athletics is a big part of that endeavor that the students come here for. And I'm all for the students that are going to represent us, getting first dibs on those classes. That's the way for any good program, you're going to have that there. Now, if you want to put in there that if there's a deadline or something and it's not full, then it opens up to non-student athletes. But this is a good thing to have a class that's for student athletes, in my opinion.
Ms. Knox, you supported? Any comments?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. DeRue, as long as that we have enough courses, for other students that may want that same kind of weight training, conditioning, all of that. But I do agree with Mr. DeRue. It's a necessary thing as an athlete. And as long as we have same classes available to everybody, then I think it's reasonable.
Mr. Richards, you asked this to be pulled out, so you're up.
Yeah, both of you guys, Ms. Knox and Mr. DeRue mentioned, if we have the same classes for the same students. And that's my point here, is if we limit this to athletes only within our school district, we're not giving all of our students at Anchor Bay High School the opportunity to attend this class.
I think they said there was other classes that are open to everybody
I
that are
believe-
non.
No,
I thought it
there's-
said-
I think there's some confusion in the beginning because originally we thought it was like weightlifting only, but I believe the particular class is for all sports. So they're gonna, in this particular class that we're talking about, conditioning for athletes, there's gonna be many different types of sporting events that they're conditioning for. Could be,
Well, and just one thing to point out again, while the description says that, they listed no prerequisite. So what would be approved would be, there would be no prerequisite for the class. So there would be no limitation. Just based as presented.
I thought Joe said there was.
Phil's right, there is no prerequisite. However, the course, is designed to be able to work on those skills. It'll be a variety, so it wouldn't. be
Sure.
exclusive.
I just want to be clear on one thing. I have a student, if I'm a student right now and I don't play any athletic events, I haven't signed up for anything to do with any athletics within the Anchor Bay School District. Obviously, but maybe I work out I may have a job, so I can't participate in the actual, sporting event itself. Maybe, we all know how, our district is, maybe we have kids that are juniors and seniors in high school and they have a military goal. But they cannot participate in athletic events because they have to work to help support a family. Is that student eligible to participate in this class?
As it's approved here, they did not list the prerequisites. So if you approve it
All right.
as written. There's
I-
no
That's
Yeah.
true.
prerequisite.
I mean, there is no prerequisite.
All right.
It's
Yeah.
designed for the athlete, like part of the program. So it's a
Yeah.
little contradictory in the way it's written. However, there is no prerequisite.
All right.
And other courses that were submitted have prerequisites.
Either other two board members have any comments? Mr. McDonald, is this something that happens at other high schools?
Yes.
And I know that we've kind of just disseminated that there is no prerequisite, but at other high schools, they've got their athletes in a class, if you will, an hour during the day.
Yep.
So I guess my first question is, will it be, is it a co-ed for me? Is, it, if 6 hours open for me, can I come if I'm a female basketball player
Yes.
or a male basketball player?
Yep. Yes, it is. And I would say too, like, if you're in a weight training class and let's say I do gymnastics, outside of the school district and you're talking with that, the teachers are gonna help that athlete train for their, I'm just using that one example,
Sure.
for that specific sport as well.
Okay.
But that's the idea is to give, and then depending on the enrollment in the class, the semester it's given, they would work on sport-specific skills, based on the makeup of the course. That's the idea of this course.
Okay. Anyone else? Any comments before we move on to vote? Another roll call for you, sir.
Another roll call. Motion was made by Mr. DeRue,
Yes.
supported by Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Just to be clear, this is to approve the course, correct?
This individual course for the 2024-25 school year.
for all
Ye-
students.
Yes.
Mr. Richards, I'll do yes. Ms. Berkmeyer
Yes.
and Mr. Green.
Yes. All right, moving on our agenda. The next item is actually a closed session, so I will entertain a motion to go into closed session to review our written opinion from legal counsel pursuant to 81H of the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.268(1)H. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. Do I have a support? Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. DeRue. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Has to be roll
Nay.
call.
Oh. Okay, well, call another roll call then, because that's what we're doing tonight.
All right, this is for closed session.
That is correct, sir.
Motion made by Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, he does.
Supported by Mr. DeRue,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Richards will be yes. Ms. Berkmeyer?
No.
No. And Mr. Green?
No.
No, they like to stay out here. All right. Motion does not pass. Passes.
You're concerning me with your math, Mr. Secretary. Do you have a 4-2 to vote?
Yes,
The
we
motion
do.
carries.
Yes.
Thank you. We will now go into closed session at 8:43 and we'll return when we have completed that closed session. All right, so we are back from taking a short breather. It was brought to my attention before we headed off to our closed session that the motion for closed session failed. It's currently 8:52. So we're just going to call what just happened a short break. And I will pause at this moment if there are any, I guess if anybody, I would entertain a motion at this point to table the item we were going to discuss in the closed session.
I think before we table it, I mean, to follow protocol, we got to see it. if it's a legal opinion that we were supposed to go into closed session and two board members felt like they wanted to do it in open session, then that's where we're at. That's the protocol of the meeting. That's why you have the vote.
And I know Robert's rules are escaping me at the moment,
Yes.
but
Huh? What are you tabling? Discussion of what? But the closed session is, so I mean, you voted no to it, so you had to know what you were doing when you voted no. You decided to take the position, you took the, correct, you took the position that you didn't want to talk about it in closed session, you want to talk about it in open session. And here we are in open session, so let's get the legal opinion on what we were going into closed session for, because this board, as a board, decided to hear it in open session. I'm not saying you're the president, I'm saying,
so I will have to honestly agree with Mr. Drew. The closed session vote did not pass, which means the item that was on the agenda should be discussed in open session. I will asterisk that at any point, if somebody wants to make a motion to table this, I would accept that. But at this point, I think are you going to present, Phil, or are we looking for Todd?
Basically, it's the, yeah, essentially it's a closed session. The legal opinion is on the China Link program, and that has been shared with you previously. So it's just further discussion on that legal opinion.
So what specifically did the legal opinion from our outside legal counsel tell us about the China Link agreement?
Basically, they said that it's permissible in order to do that under state law, federal law, all of that. The only restrictions that they have based off of the parameters that we discussed for the contract is we have to make sure that they live in district for purposes of that visa. And so they can't be, living outside the district and then being transported here. They'd have to live in the district, but it's totally permissible for them to live basically in any place that the entity has, as long as it's within the confines of the district.
Anything to add, Mr. Rathbun, about the legal opinion? Anything to add to Mr. Jankowski's comments?
No, I think that pretty much covers the legal opinion. There are a few, there's a little discussion about the differences in the type of visa out there and the impact of that, but based on the visa that we're currently utilizing, I think that was the most salient point, was that they needed to live within the district's boundaries.
Okay, so I want to remind the board that back, was it in December or January, that we made a motion to direct you.
December, yes.
It was December. So our December 2023 meeting, this board voted to direct our superintendent or his designee to negotiate a contract with China Link. And that is what the update was, as well as the legal opinion. And the reason that we were going to be meeting in closed session was to talk about that legal opinion. At this point, there is a contract in progress, unless we do something different to prevent that from happening. So we opted not to table this. We've got an update from legal.
perfect.
Unless there is any further motions, and with regard to that opinion, I think we are probably ready to move on our agenda. Is that correct? All right, hearing no comments about that. Thank you guys for the update. Let's move on and talk a little bit about board comments and points of pride. And I'm going to start with Mr. Drew. Hey, you're on the end. You get some privileges now, though, right? Third base, right?
Yeah,
Thank you.
third base. Boy, what do I say? I guess I'll talk about it was good to see that I know last time we talked about Thomas Westfall. I don't know if you guys seen Thomas Westfall got recognized by the Macomb County Commissioners. And that was great to see. And I know that someone from the board, I don't know if it was you, President Green, or maybe it was still President Burkmeyer, reached out to him to have him come here to the board meeting. And I
We
know
were hoping to have it tonight, but he couldn't make
he
it.
couldn't make it. He had something going
Was he
on.
running somewhere?
I think he was.
Sorry.
So, but that was great to see, one of ours there. And then, oh, and today, I talked with, like I was talking about earlier with Todd. It's great to see Todd back. And he's throwing together a committee starting next week of all the different skilled trades to get input from on the classes and from plumbing, electrical, all over the board. I think it's doing great things. It's one of the biggest reasons I ran for this board in the beginning was to try to bring more skilled trades and bring the highlight that. I still want to get to where we do that signing day with hard hats and guys going into the trade. So I'm excited to do that. I'm going to go to that meeting next week, and I guess that'd be my point of pride. It was especially with building those houses. This thing we did today with the solar field. I think it's all great things, and I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drew. Mr. Venditelli,
Venditelli.
I'm getting there.
It's all on the wrist, really.
Okay.
My point of pride, I'd like to highlight with the addition of the courses that we just approved, that moves the number of CTE courses up to 17 with the introduction of welding as the new addition. So great opportunity at Anchor Bay. Find out what your interests are.
Ms. Knox?
My point of pride as a former wrestling mom and still wrestling fan, we have 4 of our wrestlers going to states this year. We have Colin Transiak, Griffin Arnold, Giovanni Cathy, and Garrett Barron. So congratulations to them. And I hope to see everyone at the scholarship basketball game on March 5th at 6 p.m. When we got introduced to our new principal, Mr. McKenzie, I called him out to make sure he would be playing. So I suppose I should attend. We'll see if he is playing.
Does he play hoops? Do we have to worry about him?
I would think so.
Because I'm supporting the students, so I just need to know.
Oh. I don't know.
I will not. Everyone's bigger than me. Scare me. Ms. Berkmeyer?
My point of pride would go to our staff members. Behind all of those new courses that are added, that we approved, and honestly, even the ones that are tabled and whatnot, those came about from staff members and teachers that we have that are looking to put those programs forward. And they did a lot of legwork behind that, whether it was looking up standards, how they're gonna, how they're gonna run the course, what the course is gonna look like, to give a picture to administration and the curriculum committee. And obviously the whole board received those. And I just appreciate all of our teachers that are doing those things. I mean, that's additional time and effort spent on their own time for potentially, a class we may or may not approve. So I appreciate the work that they've done and that they're putting forward and always thinking about our students. And then just as board comments, I would really encourage people to, if they can, attend, like Mr. Jankowski mentioned, Monday, March 4th, the community bond update. It's at 6 o'clock. It's here, right?
Yes.
It's here at McDonald. I plan to attend. I know as he discussed in his updates on the bond, there are a few things that may have to look a little different and things coming forward. So I just really would like to see a good turnout of people still engaged in our bond planning and going forward, like we did through all the strategic planning. So hopefully we get some good turnout at that night. And that's all I got.
Mr. Richards?
Thank you, Mr. Green. The spaghetti dinner fundraiser for Anchor Bay Schools bus driver Margie Barber is Saturday, March 9th at Cedar Glen Golf Course from 2 to 7. Tuesday, as we were discussing, March 9th is a senior scholarship basketball game at 6:30 at the Anchor Bay High School. The all-girls spring baseball, the all-girls spring,
Tuesday, March 5th.
This is a scholarship game.
is it? All right.
March 4th is Monday.
All right, sorry. Correction. The all-girls spring basketball camp for students in grade 3rd to 8th grade is March 9th at the Anchor Bay High School. The Anchor Bay High School Sports Booster Reverse Raffle is March 15th at the Cedar Glen Golf Course. I know Mrs. Kenward mentioned it last board meeting, but I'd also like to personally congratulate Cadet Major Aubrey Sebastian on receiving 2 congressional nominations for her application to West Point. The Anchor Bay Preschool Open House for Early Childhood Center is March 6th and 7th from 6:15 to 7:30. Congratulations to Middle School North Student of the Month, 6th grade Graceland Elorkowski, 7th grade Ella Wood, 8th grade Lily Markle. The Anchor Bay Softball Youth Clinic is Saturday, March 16th at the Anchor Bay High School. And congratulations to the varsity dance team. They placed 3rd in Palm and 5th in Jazz in the Champion Award at Dance at the Team Union in Orlando, Florida. The Anchor Bay High School Career Fair is March 14th from 6 to 8 p.m. It's open for all ages and it's open to the public. We will have over 100 different careers that we will be represented. The Anchor Bay Baseball Middle School Baseball Camp is March 16th at the Sportsplex for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. Congratulations to Middle School North Captain of the Month, Christian Noss. It was noted that Kristen is a hardcore student advocate and the master behind the NWEA testing. This past winter, the testing session was under some time constraints and she handled it flawlessly. She's very positive and a great part of our positive school culture. Awesome job. A few weeks ago was National Counselor Week. I'd like to thank all the Anchor Bay counselors for everything that you do for our students. Congratulations to the Anchor Bay Jazz Ensemble. Out of 12 AA jazz bands from across the state and 48 total instrumental sections, Anchor Bay Jazz Ensemble earned 2nd runner-up for the most outstanding band and 2nd runner-up for the most outstanding section for the saxophones. My points of pride, I actually stole it off of tonight's agenda. The Anchor Bay High School, for the first time ever, the middle school students qualified for the state bridge building competition. It's great to see things like that. Good luck and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you for the comprehensive update, as always. I have several commitments now apparently on my schedule. Thank you for that. Friday night, I went down to McInray down in Harrison Township for a teacher staff appreciation that was put on by McInray, and it was free of charge for teachers and staff. And I'm actually proud to say we were happily represented down there. I think there's about 750 people down there, and there were multiple tables of Anchor Bay people. Some not so happy to see me, some others happy to see me. It was a short visit, but there was representatives from our elementary, our middle school, our high school, and even an administrator there. So that was awesome to see. It was awesome to see them interacting with teachers from other districts and sharing tips and trials and tribulations, including at my table. Want to remind everybody that the Baltimore Lions Winterfest is Friday, Saturday, Sunday of this weekend. You can find their schedule on Facebook of what's going on, bands. I think Saturday's a kids' day. And then I want to personally invite each and every one of you board members to join me in the Polar Plunge on Sunday at 1 p.m. The good thing is there's no hole to jump in because there's no ice. So you just walk off the beach, take a casual swim, and then come back out of the water. It's not really a big deal. The water's probably cold. So that is Sunday at 1 p.m. The cost is $25. I believe I will be jumping in the lake or walking into the lake. So each of you is invited to join me. So send me a text and let me know if you're going to join me. And I will meet you in the tent prior to the event where we will warm up before we jump into the cold water. Legislative updates.
Since they are still deadlocked in the House, there's really nothing moving at all. Waiting for the special election. The next major thing will be the House and the Senate. We're waiting for them to release their budgets.
Thank you. Board committee updates. There were some changes to chairpersons of committees with me taking over. There was no changes in the committees as a whole. But I don't know if there's any updates to be given since the last time we met.
The only one was policy that or curriculum. I should say.
Curriculum, we talked about curriculum in the classes. So I appreciate your guys' effort on the new courses. Anyone else that they want to add? Committees, meetings that they attended? Fair enough. If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vendatelli. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 9:07 p.m.